of human society, avagyana atmatam, the mutually disrespectful behavior. Nirpa, O king, Treta Adishu, beginning from Treta Yuga. Hare, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Acha, the deity worship in the temple. Kriyayai, for the purpose of introducing the method of worship. Kavibi, by learned persons. Krita, has been done. Translation. My dear king, when great sages and saintly persons saw mutually disrespectful dealings at the beginning of Treta Yuga, deity worship in the temple was introduced with all paraphernalia. Responsibly please, my dear king, when great sages and saintly persons saw mutually disrespectful behavior, at the beginning of Treta Yuga, deity worship in the temple was introduced with all paraphernalia. As it said in the Srimad Bhagavatam 12.352, Kriteya dhyayato vishnam treyayam yajato makai dvapare paricharyayam kalo taddariketanat. Whatever result one obtained in Sat Yuga by meditating on Vishnu, in Treta Yuga by performing sacrifices, and in Dwapara Yuga by serving the Lord's lotus feet, one can also obtain in Kali Yuga simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. In Satya Yuga, every person was spiritually advanced and there was no envy between great personalities. Gradually, however, because of material contamination, with the advance of the ages, disrespectful dealings appeared even among Brahmins and Vaishnavas. Actually, an advanced Vaishnav is to be respected more than Vishnu. As stated in the Padma Purana, Aradhananam Sarvesham Vishnu Aradhanam Param. Of all kinds of worship, worship of Lord Vishnu is the best. Tasmat Paramatam Devi Tadiyanam Samacharanam. And recommended more than worship of Vishnu is worship of the Vaishnava. Formerly, all activities were performed in connection with Vishnu, but after Satya Yuga, there were symptoms of disrespectful dealings among Vaishnavas. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said that a Vaishnava is he who has helped others become Vaishnavas. An example of one who has converted many others into Vaishnavas is Narada Muni. A powerful Vaishnava who has converted others into Vaishnavas is to be worshipped. But because of material contamination, sometimes such an exalted Vaishnava is disrespected by other minor Vaishnavas. When great saintly persons saw this contamination, they introduced worship of the deity in the temple. This began in Treta Yuga and was especially prominent in Dwapara Yuga, Dwapare Paricharyayam. But in Kali Yuga, worship of the deity is being neglected. Therefore, chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is more powerful than deity worship. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu set a practical example in that he did not establish any temples or deities, but he profusely introduced the Sankirtan movement. Therefore, Krishna consciousness preachers should give more stress to the Sankirtan movement, especially by distributing transcendental literature more and more. This helps the Sankirtan movement. Whenever there is a possibility to worship the deity, we may establish many centers. But generally, we should give more stress to the distribution of transcendental literature, for this will be more effective in converting people to Krishna consciousness. It is said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Acharyam eva haraye, pujam ya sradadayate, natad bhakteshu chanyeshu, sa bhakta prakrita smrita. A person who is very faithfully engaged in the worship of the deity in the temple, but does not know how to behave toward devotees and people in general, is called a prakrita bhakta or a kinishta adhikari. A prakrita devotee or neophyte devotee is still on the material platform. He certainly engages in worshipping the deity, but he cannot appreciate the activities of a pure devotee. It has actually been seen that even an authorized devotee who is engaged in the service of the Lord by preaching the mission of Krishna consciousness is sometimes criticized by neophyte devotees. Such neophytes are described by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Sarva Prani Samanana Samatanam Avagya Spadadimatam tu Bhagavat Pratimaiva Patram Iti Aha. For those who cannot properly appreciate the activities of authorized devotees, deity worship is the only way for spiritual advancement. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita 7:11 Anchalila, it is clearly said, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahe Tara Pravatana. Without being authorized by Krishna, one cannot preach the holy name of the Lord throughout the entire world. Nevertheless, a devotee who does so is criticized by neophyte devotees, Kanishta Adhikaris, who are on the lower stages of devotional service. For them, deity worship is strongly recommended. Om Agyanatamaranda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chakshurn Manitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobastam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swabadantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Vanchikalpatrubhischa Kripa Sindhuvyeva Paritanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So very nice. Srila Prabhupada's emphasizing in Kali Yuga, Sankirtan book distribution. So as the ages go on, things degrade. In Satya Yuga, most people are getting liberated. And then Treta Yuga, it's still pretty good, but even in Treta Yuga, things start to go wrong. And then Dwapara, and then Kali Yuga, everything goes wrong. Everything's finished. So here we are in Kali Yuga. Only a few thousand years in, on the cusp of the golden age, and we may experience blips in the next 10,000 years, but overall there'll be an upsurge of Krishna consciousness, and many souls will go back to Goloka Vrindavan. That's Lord Chaitanya's mission, not only on this planet but throughout the universe. So and then after that, things aren't so good, and then again Satya Yuga comes in, and there's 1,000 rotations of the kalpas in one day of Brahma, which makes it all seem insignificant. And that's one day, and that whole lifetime of Brahma does not even equal a blinking of an eye in the spiritual world. So it's very hard to comprehend how big eternality is in terms of time. So we're in Kali Yuga now, things are going downhill, and so Prabhupada is emphasizing for the neophytes, temple worship is important because the neophytes, they don't appreciate. So what is really good is if you can get the neophytes to engage in the Sankirtan Yogya, then they're raised to the Majjhima platform, and the Majjhima Adhikaris are not offensive to the preachers and the Uttama Adhikaris, but the Kanishtas, because they have mundane vision, Dristai Svabhava Janatiya Vapasasta Doshana Prakritatamiha Bhakta Janajapaji Ganganga Samna Kalabud Buddhafena Pankya Brahmadarvatam Abhagachitini Damai. Do you know the translation, Jananda? You don't know that one. Do you know where it's from? It's the sixth text in the Nectar of Instruction. It says, we should bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. And similarly, we should disregard a devotee's superficial qualities like his complexion or whether he has a deformed or diseased or infirm body. But we should take his association anyway. So to do that, one has to raise his consciousness beyond just seeing the deities as being... And if we disrespect the devotees, then it doesn't take long before we start disrespecting the deities. Deity greeting is to greet the deities. So it's like if the Queen was coming and we put a message around, the Queen's going to be coming at, oh, not the Queen, actually the King. The King is coming at 7 o'clock this morning. Are you going to come to greet him? Well, I'll just finish this round and then I'll come over and say Haribol to him. And that's just the king. So with the deities, if we can't get anything else together, at least be there for deity greeting. Otherwise, that kind of lackadaisical, uncaring attitude starts to pervade everything else. And of course, our ability to respect the devotees will be very much diminished if we can't at least respect the deities, which is the Kanishta Adhikari. That's the lowest stage. At least we have to be able to do that. And then from there we can be propelled forward. And the preaching also, for that reason. And Srila Prabhupada saying here, it's interesting because he says that therefore Krishna conscious preachers should give more stress to the Sankirtan movement by distributing transcendental literature more and more. This helps the Sankirtan movement whenever there's a possibility to worship the deity. We may establish centers, but generally we should give more stress to the distribution of transcendental literature. This will be more effective in converting people to Krishna consciousness. So what's interesting about that is it'll be more effective in converting people to Krishna consciousness. It doesn't refer just to the people that are getting the books. It's referring also to the people that are distributing the books. It will be very effective in converting them to Krishna consciousness as well. So we do want to go beyond just being, but Srila Prabhupada at the same time, he did establish a lot of deities in the temples, aware that for the neophytes, this would be important. But it was meant that we didn't just stay at that stage of worshipping the deities, but that we took the next step to become Majjhima Adhikaris. So Majjhima Adhikari is one who's an artist, 75% of an artist have been removed, and he's reached the stage of Nishta. Nishta means to be steady and fixed. Ka-nishta means, ka means without, so ka-nishta means without being fixed. So the ka-nishta is up and down. One day he's into it, one day he's not into it. One day he's convinced, the next day he's not so convinced. Bayuda Vikalpa, mental vacillation, up, down, up, down, up, down. Then when he starts to steady out and the anarthas are removed, then he achieves Nishta, and then he's Majjhima. Then he can preach, then he can distinguish. You put a Majjhima Adhikari on the street, and he can see the devotee, he can see the non-devotee, he can see the envious, and he can see the hand of Krishna. So it's more dynamic, being aware of Krishna through preaching than being aware of Krishna through deity worship. But they are both meant to assist each other. That's why we take second initiation, Patratika. Vidhi is there so that we can traverse the path of rules and regulations. Narada Muni recommended that. We can become regulated, and at the same time, Harinam Sankirtan, Bhagavatam, chanting the holy name, and distributing books, and Harinam, and Rath Yatra. So a Prakrita devotee or neophyte devotee is still on the material platform. So I just read actually interesting thing this morning. This was from Chaitanya Charan in Reflections of the Bhagavad Gita. It's talking about austerity of the speech. And he says, before you open your mouth, open your mind. Think before you go to say something or make some judgment. Just try and think, okay, well. And then if you do that, then you may find once you do open your mind, you see things in a different way, consider things in a different way, and then you don't what would have maybe been detrimental. And that's why the Kanishta is a neophyte, because he's always fighting. He's always looking to get into a fight. How would you define a neophyte, Jananda Prabhu? And what would be the symptom of a neophyte that is crossed the line and can now be considered a Majjhima Adhikari? What would be the defining factor?
and the ones who are downright atheistic in the group as well.
Yeah, so it's in his behavior. It manifests that he becomes steady physically, then verbally, and then mentally. So when a person gets to the point where he doesn't look down in the dumps one day, but he's always enthusiastic every day, then you know, oh, that must be Majjhima. He's reached the stage of being steady now. He's always smiling, always happy, always seeing things in a positive way. So that's the distinction. So that's what we want to initially at least become physically steady. And then we learn to control our tongue, and then the mind. The mind is a separate category, all on its own. For him who's conquered the mind is the best of friends. But if you fail to do so, then it remains the greatest enemy. So it's not that your mind is like semi-friendly. It's the greatest enemy. Until you've learned to conquer it, then you have the greatest enemy. And being able to distinguish yourself from the mind as well. Like I saw an interesting thing yesterday on Instagram, and it was a man, his mind was telling him all kinds of horrible thoughts. His son had died at 21 and a half years of age. His name was Aya. And so the mind was saying, you should have gone to the other hospital. You should have taken him to the other hospital. And he says to the mind, yeah, you told me that 17,500 times. And he said, he made a rule for the mind. He said, from now on, I only want you to give me useful advice or thoughts that bring joy. Otherwise, I don't want to hear it. And so the mind was saying to him, Aya died. Aya died, Aya died. So then he said to the mind, no, I want you to say, Aya lived. Aya lived for 21 and a half years. And he was the most wonderful person. And he enriched my life so much, and I learned so much from him. He lived for 21 and a half years. And it was such a glorious privilege to have him in my life. And so he makes the point that you can make that decision. You can discipline the mind that you don't want to hear thoughts that will be discouraging or detrimental. You just want useful advice and joyful thoughts. Anything else, I'm not interested. And he was saying that we can distinguish ourselves from the mind, that we are not the mind. The mind is some separate entity. And we don't have to just do whatever it says or accept whatever it says as valid. We can say, I'm sorry, that's not acceptable. Come back with something more positive. So these are all symptoms of the Majjhima Adhikari, that his mind is now disciplined and his mind has become his friend. So the mind is not, just like if we put a rope across this temple room and it's just 6 inches off the ground, and we ask you to walk across the rope, won't be a problem to do it. Maybe a bit tricky, but should be okay. But if it was 10,000 feet up in the air, then it would be difficult, because the mind is going to make us afraid, and it can trip us up and make us fall. So we're trying to train the mind so that it becomes a friend, that it only comes up with positive affirmations. Otherwise, we don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear anything that's discouraging, because we can't use that in Krishna service. We can only use encouraging thoughts in Krishna service. So we have that filter. Okay, what is this you're coming up with? Is this encouraging me or is this discouraging me? Oh, it's discouraging you. Okay, I don't want to hear it. So that's a certain level of discipline. Shiva Ramaj was saying, you can't fudge it. You've either got control of the mind or you haven't. It's one or the other. And it's just, how long is it going to be? How long are you going to prolong the agony until you get that bull by the horns and you just say, okay, I'm the boss here. I'm the jiva and you're just the mind. So you need to listen to me. So then you pull the mind in. And the intelligence has to be strong to do that. And we develop the intelligence through association, through faith, and through knowledge. And then when that's strong, then the mind stays controlled. Then the senses will only go where we want. They'll act according to our plan. So any questions or comments? Yes, Prajumna and then Reynus.
Very often when Srila Prabhupada is writing his purports, he's reflecting on things that are going on.
Yeah, yeah.
And at the time that he was writing this, I'm fairly certain, because I'm also reading the 7th chapter of Adhoksaja. His god brothers were criticizing him for making Brahmins out of Western, who was allowing men and women to be in the temple together, things like that. They were discouraging him, and he's now answering them.
Yeah.
That, okay, you can stay in your temple and worship the deities,
Yeah.
but the real service is to go out and spread Krishna consciousness. And he's talking about, the Acharya who can,
Yeah.
he can analyze the cultural situation and adjust things, not make things outside of the box, but adjust things within inside the box that will help to spread Krishna consciousness. And I'm fairly certain that's what he's speaking about.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, there's some very scathing remarks. And when Srila Prabhupada was leaving his body, he was apologizing. He says, but he was doing it for the preaching. So himself, he's very humble toward all the devotees. But if he has to, then he will stand up and say quite a clear line to protect. And that's something that we have to be careful of, Ritviks and Gaudiya Mat, because Srila Prabhupada understood we needed GBC and we needed Acharya. He understood we needed that combination. But the Ritviks only think it's Acharya, and GBC, and the Gaudiya Mat think it's only Acharya. The two have to be combined. So Srila Prabhupada fully understood what his Guru Maharaj wanted, and he was able to follow that instruction. And then everything else was successful because of that. And so, yeah, to warn us also, and to safeguard us, look, just stay in the society I've created. I'm reading When Good Fortune Arises right now. It's Madhavananda Prabhu's autobiography of Gaura Govinda Maharaj. And at that time, when Gaura Govinda Maharaj was just become a guru, 2 gurus had fallen down. So there was a lot of disciples that were confused and discontented. And he was reassuring them to continue on with the process and to just stay in Srila Prabhupada's society, stay in ISKCON, stay under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada, and by his mercy, then eventually you'll be rightly situated. And it's a shame because some of his disciples did break away eventually from ISKCON, and it was, it's very obvious in the book as you're reading it that he emphasizes so much: stay in the society, work in the society. If there's problems and difficulties, then try and work them out. Don't just go somewhere else. So for those who cannot properly appreciate the activities of authorized devotees, so Srila Prabhupada says in the purport in CC that the ISKCON movement is a branch of the Chaitanya tree. And Srila Prabhupada was authorized to write the books. And they were actually, Krishna was writing the books through Srila Prabhupada. So everything was being dictated from within by Krishna. It's interesting because there's different groups and they take our morning program and they kind of bash it around a bit and modify it to what they want, some kind of watered down, diluted version of what Prabhupada has in the morning program. But the morning program that Prabhupada set up, it's like we have the nectar of instruction, Sukirtananu, Tannama Rupacharitadi Sukirtananu, Smicho Kramena Rasana Manasini Oja, Tishtan Rajay, Tad Anurgay Jananagami Kalam Nayam Adil Akil Idupadesha Sharam. The essence, Sharam, Upadesha of all instruction is to live your life where you're chanting and remembering Krishna all the time. So Prabhupada designed the morning program. It's like the essence of the nectar of instruction. So it's just the bare minimum that he's asking us to follow. And then, like this chapter is saying, that will be ideal family life. Not that family life becomes a distraction, but the family becomes a team and they're there to assist in the Sankirtan movement. So you go around the doors with your kids, distributing books, and your wife helps in other ways as well. Okay. Yes.
I like what you were saying about the mind being under control of the intelligence.
Yeah.
But for many of us, before we come across this knowledge, we associate that voice in the mind, the voice in the head as being ourselves.
Yeah.
But actually, there can be many different entities speaking in the mind.
Yeah. Jai.
So I personally found it very useful to make that distinction that the critic inside of the voice isn't necessarily coming from myself. It can be
Yeah.
or something external.
Yeah. And that's why it's good to pause before you say anything or do anything and allow yourself to reflect on something. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, before he chastised anybody, he would wait for 2 or 3 days and he would seriously think about what he was going to say to this devotee and had the right intention, and then he would advise the devotee. So if we just off the cuff immediately say some knee-jerk reaction, then we may well regret it later on. So better to reflect on things, make excuses for people, and then our own enthusiasm to practice Krishna consciousness won't be impeded. And that's what we want to try and protect, our enthusiasm to perform devotional service. And that is hampered. The neophyte is, he's Kanishta Adhikari going through Anata Nivritti, so unwanted things are coming up. And unfortunately, they're not unwanted. They're supposed to be unwanted things coming up, but he actually wants them. So he's trying to pull them out the heart, and then he's putting them back in again when no one's looking, thinking maybe that could come in useful later on, you know. So that stage is compromised if the neophyte is chanting Nam Aparad, and Vaishnava Aparad is Nam Aparad, and then it means the potency of the holy name is very weak, and the endeavor to become purified of the unwanted things takes so much longer. And the devotee, sometimes he can go into the Anata Nivritti stage and he can never come up the other end because he's so busy making offenses that he's hardly making any benefit from his chanting. Namaparad, you don't make benefit from chanting. If you chant Namaparad, there's no spiritual advancement. You just get material desires fulfilled. Namabas, you're trying the best that you can. And then Shuddhanam comes in. Well, the quickest way to get to Shuddhanam is to increase your chanting. Chant as much as you can off your beads, as well as your 16 rounds on your beads. Just try and do extra rounds. And then that'll bring us to the stage of Kirtaniya Sadahari. When you're chanting constantly, then the offenses can't stay. They're just being washed all the time. It's like having a cup, and you're constantly pouring water in the cup. And even though you're dropping ink in the cup all the time, it can't stay because there's a constant flow of water. So if we're enthusiastic and we're confidently endeavoring and we're engaged in Nam Sankirtan, then the drops of discrepancies that are there, they'll be washed away. But where the problem comes in is we see some drops in the water and we go, hold on a second. We turn the tap off. We go, no, what's all this about, eh? And then the whole cup becomes filled with some murky dark. So when the ink drop comes in, that's when you turn the tap full on. It's maybe half on right now, and you turn it full on. So you chant more intensely, you chant more enthusiastically, you distribute more books, you serve the devotees more, you just increase the tap, and then that will wash things out. It's never the solution to, this Krishna consciousness, I think I need to just do a little bit less. It's getting a little bit intense. I'm just going to slacken off on the Krishna consciousness. That's never the solution. That just compounds the problem.
Yes, Prabhu, you said something interesting there I would like you to elaborate on, if you could. You'd mentioned that when we are chanting the holy name offensively, then we get our material desires fulfilled. So could having our material desires fulfilled be part of our advancement as well, to help us get past these things that are maybe holding us back?
If you fulfill a material desire, the reward you get for fulfilling a material desire, unfortunately, is not abatement from material desire, but increase of material desire. They're like seeds. So if you plant a seed, then from that seed others will fructify. So what we're trying to do is uproot the seeds and also burn the seeds so that they're no longer fertile. And then they just become cleansed out of the heart. Just like you go back to your childhood and you look at the things that you found interesting and now you've grown out of them, so they no longer amuse you or hold any attraction for you. So it should be that as we mature in our Krishna consciousness, desires that we hold very dear to us right now, we grow out of them, and we become mature. And we think, what is the point of this? It's temporary, and it's misleading. It's deviating me from the path. I mean, if we're caught up with desires for things in the material, can you just imagine what it must be like when you get to the heavenly planets? It's described in one of the cantos of the Bhagavatam there. When you leave, you go through all these heavenly planets to see if you're still interested in anything before you actually go back. So you're like, oh, and then, yeah, I'm not interested in women anymore. They're really ugly. Well, the most beautiful woman, Prabhupada said, in the material world, on earth, you get the most beautiful woman. And he said, and if you put her toward a demigod, she'll look like a frog. And we're having trouble with the frogs, you know. And then we see this absolutely gorgeous demigod. They don't grow old, they don't sweat, everything's amazing. And he said, and if you take one of the most beautiful demigods and you put her next to a gopi, then the demigod looks like a frog. So we have to cultivate our attraction for the spiritual side so that we lose our attraction. Otherwise, if we have some desire and we fulfill that desire, it's not that Maya gives you a pat on the back and says, great, okay, so we've got that one off the bucket list. You've only got 9 more desires left. No, what happens is when you fulfill that desire, that Maya says, oh, well, that one desire actually will now lead to 10 others that you have, and they will lead to 100, and in that way it will increase. Chaitanya Charan was saying that Maya's job is actually not to illusion us. Her job is to teach us the futility of material sense enjoyment. That's what she's trying to do. So as soon as you have a material desire and you think, it's futile, even if I fulfill it, I'll waste so much time, so much energy, and it won't get me what I want anyway. Then Maya's like, good boy, that's it. That's what we're trying to teach you, you know. And if you don't learn it that way, then okay, you have to fall down to something, get involved in something, and then after however long it takes, you come to the same conclusion. This is just futile. So you can learn the easy way, or you can learn the hard way. The hard way is longer, and you get hit on the head a lot. It's futile. Okay, well, let me try this one. It's futile. Like it's like that's the heavy way of teaching, you know. The better way would just be, no, it's okay. Not interested. And then I was like, yes, that's it. So her job's not to illusion us. What do you think, John Andrew? What would you say Maya's job was? No? Well, not if you've been listening. Maya's job is to teach us the futility of material enjoyment. That's her job. If it was just to illusion us, then she could keep illusioning us, and we'd be like, oh, that was really good. I just fulfilled the desire. Wow, that was really good. Let's go into, and I've just fulfilled this desire. Oh, that was really good. But the conclusion always, when you do something material, is, oh, that was futile. You feel very dissatisfied, like you've let the side down. That's Maya's job. But you have to stay awake to find out what Maya's job is. If you don't stay awake, then it's offensive. Laya is the Laya. It's in the Madhura Kandamini, there's these different obstacles that you have to overcome. So the tendency to sleep is due to a disinterest in spiritual things and an attraction for material things. Like for a spiritually advanced person, when he's hearing Krishna Katha, he becomes very enlivened. He may have been exhausted, he's not slept for 72 hours. And then you start talking about Krishna, and immediately he wakes up. He doesn't want to drink, he doesn't want to eat, just wants to keep hearing the Krishna Katha. Well, for a material person whose heart is diseased with ignorance, then he only wakes up when it's time for prasadam. Otherwise, everything's just sleeping, you know. The jaundiced condition. And so the holy name to him tastes very sour. Doesn't taste sweet. Shri Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapya Vidya. The name is very sweet. But for someone who's jaundiced with ignorance, and ignorance is sleep, then it's very bitter. It's a very bitter taste. And listen to Krishna Katha is very bitter. Because the anarthas in the heart are being threatened. And if you ever give class, you notice when you're hitting anarthas, when you're talking about something and there's anarthas being hit, the devotees that don't want to hear that, they're the ones that fall asleep, because that's the easiest way to safeguard against having your anarthas removed. Oh, he's saying we have to give up eating Mars bars. Because you don't want to hear that. Because if you hear it, then it may get rid of it, and you want to hold on to your anarthas. Somebody in the mode of ignorance wants to do that. Ignorance means to ignore. A person in the mode of ignorance is very expert at ignoring things. That's what it means. You're ignoring Krishna, you're ignoring the devotees, you're ignoring the Strashna. You may have been told 1,000,000 times, don't do this, or because this will happen. I don't care. I don't care. I'm just going to ignore it. That's the mode of ignorance.
Yes, that's very informative and helpful, Prabhu. Thank you. I came across something some years ago, which is saying that if you try to give knowledge to someone that's, one level outside their understanding, then they'll try to ignore it. They'll get sleepy or disinterested. 2 levels above it, they'll get angry. 3 levels above it, they'll attack you, and then so on to the point where someone will actually kill you if you try and give them knowledge that is, too far outside of their
Ability to comprehend.
Yeah. So like maybe some things that we could be seeing here might stimulate somebody on the street to such a point that they might actually consider it so offensive that it requires some severe action, which is maybe something worth considering.
And that's why it's very important that we learn by preaching. And sometimes you gain experience by, they say good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. So generally you make the mistakes, and you say something, and the person doesn't like it at all, and then he doesn't take the book, and you realize, okay, so that wasn't any good. So on Sankirtan, our goal isn't to prove that we're right. Our goal is to engage them in devotional service. So that means that we may need to concede, You may need to say, oh, okay, I never thought of that before. Anyway, this book's really good, you should take one. And the person, okay, I'll take the book, Then that's the success, because they've gone away with the book and they're favorable. And that sometimes means you have to concede, One time we went down to the abattoir, and this man came out, and I thought he had freckles because it'd gone brown, And then I realized as I was talking to him what it was, And I was really praying. And the last thing I wanted to do was get into an argument with him about the pros and cons of killing animals, So we said, yeah, we're monks, and we just help people. It'd be nice if you could. And he says, yeah, I'll give you a donation. He gave £10. We gave him a book, and we went, And now it's between him and the book. See, a book can say something, and you don't feel so offended by it. But if a person says it, then there's the false egos involved. So book distribution is very good, because the books just go out, and then people look at it and think, you shouldn't kill animals. And then they can ponder on it, Or if you say it. So our main work as devotees in ISKCON is just get the books out. Even if the person that gets the book doesn't read it or doesn't agree with it, that book will give off a vibration. And wherever it's residing, the people in the atmosphere will get purified. And then it's just a question of time. The first wave of Krishna consciousness is Maha Punya. It's just that people get human birth. They see Rath Yatra, they get a bag of prasadam, a devotee touches them, they hear somebody saying Hare Krishna, they get a human form. So our main work right now is not trying to get a person to become prema bhaktis. It's just to make sure that they get a human form in the next life. So it's a long-term project. It'll take generations. So they get Mahapunya, then Swasti Aina, then maybe next lifetime they read the book and find it interesting and decide to commit. Then they start an auspicious journey, Swasti Aina. And then Shobham, they're on the way back to Godhead. So there's like 10 million people are going to now get human birth. They come back. Of those 10 million, maybe 1 million takes it seriously and becomes a committed sadhaka. And then of those, maybe only 10% are going to go back to Godhead that lifetime. So you see how there's like layers of purification and auspiciousness going on, you know. So we're sowing the seeds. And we're trying to at least ourselves become sadhakas, committed sadhakas, that we've become strong in our determination, unwavering, and at least become nishta. Prabhupada wanted everyone to at least be nishta. Because nishta can still go to Vaikuntha. And then if you go up from there, then you can go to Goloka. At least you won't have to come back again. Any other questions or comments?
There's a short passage in the book about Jayananda.
Yeah. Get Jayananda to read it out. He's okay to read it out. You need the microphone?
Jayananda Prabhu was one of the earliest disciples of Srila Prabhupada who joined the Krishna conscious movement in San Francisco in 1967. He was the first man to be Srila Prabhupada's contribution to the Bhagavad Gita. He also wrote Srila Prabhupada's Kalm. He organized the first Rathayatras in San Francisco, working very hard to solve everything from advertising parades to building the life of art and organizing Prasad distribution. He is remembered very fondly by all as a kind, serious, thoughtful, and very hard-working devotee. Passed away in 1977. Srila Prabhupada wrote the following after Jayananda was passing. Jayananda's death is glorious. His very privileged estate was the use of such a user's body that he gave it up. He has left his body very wonderfully and has been transferred to Vaikuntha. Everyone should follow the example of Jayananda. I am very proud of having such a nice disciple. Because of Jayananda's picture, we are in the wrath of Jayananda in all of our temples today with this disciple holding a festival in time. Just as we do on his appearance day of the great Vaishnavas.
Jai. His Grace Jayananda Prabhu ki Jai. Still got time for a quick one.
Srila Prabhupada said that Jayananda was the first Western Vaishnava saint.
The first.
Western Vaishnava saint.
Wow. Yeah, so no ordinary souls that come to assist Srila Prabhupada. Question?
Thank you very much, Guru. When we are not under the control of our mind, then whose control the mind is under? When we are not controlling the mind, then
When we're not controlling the mind.
who is controlling the mind?
Who is controlling the mind? The modes of nature are controlling the mind. The mind is the mouthpiece of the modes of material nature. So when the modes of material nature are saying something, they're saying it through the senses, and the senses are interfaced with the mind, and then the intelligence is trying to organize everything. So if you don't take the reins and direct them, then the horses, the senses, which are controlled by the modes, they'll pull you. They pull the mind in all different directions. Oh, let's go and eat that. Oh, why don't we go and buy those? Oh, look at this person over here. Let's go and look at them. They look attractive. And the intelligence is like, no, we're devotee of Krishna. We don't eat sausages. We don't look at ladies. We're brahmachari. Come on. And you pull it back in, you know. There was a film, actually, this man, he had a ventriloquist doll. And the ventriloquist doll, he didn't like certain people. So the ventriloquist doll said, kill him. And so he killed them, and then he ended up killing quite a few. And he says to the ventriloquist doll, I can't do this anymore, I can't do it anymore. And then he killed himself. And as he was dying, the ventriloquist doll looked at him and he said, "You fool, you've killed me." So that's what the mind is. It's like this little puppet inside your head telling you to do things all the time. And it's your greatest enemy. Great, because there's Arjuna, he's lined up with Maharatis. You know, you could say the greatest enemy was Bhishma, or the greatest enemy was Khan. There was so many formidable warriors. And Krishna's saying, no, they're not your greatest enemy. Your mind is your greatest enemy. ISKCON Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Premanandi, Haribo.
Jai Adhoksaja Krishna Prabhu ki. Jai.